down to the prince driving his bride off in his father's car, to the gentle amusement of his brother.
William's been trying to drive that car for years, and the couple of times that he has driven it at home, he stalled it. And it is a very difficult car to drive, combined with the fact that he can't drive. But to make it even harder, he obviously had his spurs on, which was very entertaining to see him sort of out of Buckingham Palace.
And let's be honest, the royal wedding also felt like a happy ending after troubles that had dogged the Queen's own family. In 1949, as a young married woman, the Queen made a speech to the Mothers' Union, denouncing divorce and separation as producing some of the darkest evils in society. Back then, monarchy and iron-strong traditional marriage seemed a natural equation. Divorced people couldn't be invited to the royal enclosure at Ascot. When in 1955 the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret, wanted to marry a divorced man, Group Captain Peter Townsend, a senior minister threatened to resign from the cabinet, and the marriage was vetoed. But during the Queen's reign, attitudes have changed at bewildering speed. 3 of the Queen's own children divorced. The sad collapse of the marriage of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer produced a full-scale royal crisis and a time of deep personal unhappiness for the Queen herself, undoubtedly the worst year in her life.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
"1992 was the year that struck the Queen like no other. On her 45th wedding anniversary, the seat of the monarchy for almost 1,000 years, Windsor Castle, went up in flames after a humble spotlight began a blaze which spread through more than 100 rooms. The inferno accelerated a dramatic shift in the way the Queen dealt with money and tax. The government suggested taxpayers should fund the £37 million bill for restoring Windsor, but there was an outcry. And it came when questions were already being asked about why the Queen didn't pay tax on her personal income.
The fire at Windsor, I think, affected the timing of the announcement of it. But that sort of area of reform, people have been thinking about for quite a while, and it was progressive.
Because there had been a sort of drumbeat of criticism and the opinion polls and so on were showing that people felt that she should pay tax.
Yes, I mean that she shouldn't be above that part of the law.
During that period, at any stage, were you worried about the status of the monarchy in the country?
I was concerned at the shower of criticism and unpopularity that the monarchy was facing in the short term. I wasn't worried about the long term for 2 reasons. Firstly, we have seen this before, Queen Victoria being an obvious example, very unpopular for a very long period of time after Prince Albert died. And secondly, the roots of the monarchy are so deep that even in a period of unpopularity, it can sustain that and come through at the end of it.
The Queen moved quickly, finalising her decision to pay income tax and deciding to meet the Windsor repair bill by throwing open the doors to paying visitors, starting with Buckingham Palace. Since 1993, they've arrived in their tens of thousands to see the famous corridors, the grand interiors, and the priceless art collection. The income has grown and grown, though this is money not for the Queen, but earmarked for the care of those palaces and artworks. The greatest traditional source of royal wealth are in fact the Crown estates, monarchies, farmland, London's squares, forests and foreshores, going back to medieval times. A new deal means the monarchy will get a percentage of that income, with safeguards and the right of MPs to oversee spending. Most of what the Queen has isn't really hers personally. She can't go out and sell it. And the annual cost of the system to the rest of us isn't exactly huge. It's been estimated that every year the monarchy costs each of us about half the price of a cup of coffee at a high street chain. Still, monarchy is a relatively expensive option. Or is it?
What do you think Britain would be like? What would be the difference
if there was no monarchy, there had been no Queen's reign and we were a republic?
A number of people think, well, we'd be better off because we'd spend less money on all of this. Well, let's knock that on the head, because if you look at those countries with presidencies, turns out they spend almost as much, if not more in some cases, than we do. So I don't think...
It doesn't save you money.
It doesn't save you money. Actually, when I think about the royal wedding, which I had the privilege to be at, that sort of event, I mean, and the global stage, you know, how much would we have paid for the advertising for our British design industry to get all of that on global television around the world?
A third of the world's population, I read, probably watched
British designers selling their wares. You know, this was fantastic for advertising.
The Windsor fire was a great disaster for the royal family, but from the ashes of that disaster has grown an enormous success.